Hi, I'm Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky of the Ninth Congressional District. And so are you of the Ninth Congressional District. So I am happy that you, my constituents, are here. This is sometimes a time of some anxiety and concern about how to make sure that you do the right thing in order to file your income tax. And of course, that day is coming up. April 15th is the big day. And although I want you to know, again, don't get too anxious about it. There are ways to file extensions, but that is the official day. And I have to admit that I have not myself done my taxes yet. And so what you are going to hear today is called a webinar. So there's not going to be the live Q&A for people to just get online, but there will be many ways that you can let us know what the questions that you have, and we will continue to answer those questions during the webinar. You are going to hear from people from the Internal Revenue Service who are absolutely the best of the best. We have worked with them before. They are the experts. They are going to be able to give you the background you need and the details too, to make sure that you are prepared to file your taxes and do it in the most expedient way. So welcome, glad you're here, and I look forward to listening too. So let's go. And I want to introduce you now. You're going to hear from Catherine Angel. Isn't that the perfect name? She's a staff in my office and Jan Schakowsky's office. And she's going to take it away. Catherine.
Thank you so much. So as Congresswoman Schakowsky said, my name is Catherine Angel. I'm a constituent advocate in the office. So first we want to start out with just always expressing our number one thing, which is our office is here to help you. Tonight, we're focusing on the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, and tax day coming up. So we're going to focus on how our office can help you with your tax questions and your tax returns. We're going to go over questions that you guys have submitted at the end and any questions that may come up during the presentation. Our three panelists are experts in what they do, so we're looking forward to hearing from them and any updates they may have. We'll share our link to our Privacy Act release form, which is something we need if you find yourself in need of any specific help from our office. So now we'll talk about our panelists a little bit. We'll start with Andrew from the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance, VITA as it is called. He'll go over those requirements, how they can help you file your taxes if you qualify. Then we'll hear from Susie, who's our congressional district liaison. She covers a few states, Illinois included. And finally from BC, who's our taxpayer advocate service expert who helps our constituents on a local level here in the Chicago office with their questions, ongoing questions about their returns. So I'll turn it over to Andrew now.
Very good. Thank you so much. And I'll just give it a minute for Susie to start sharing the screen here. So, yep, it's that time of year again, tax time. I'm going to run through a couple of just quick pointers about deadlines and options that you may have when filing a tax return. But we have up on the screen here just a list of some of the things that we're going to cover here over the next hour or so. Talk about the filing due date, how to choose a reputable return preparer, some basic tips and best practices for filing, what to expect after you file, language resources if English is not your primary language. We're going to warn you about some of the tax scams that are out there. We'll talk about some of the online tools that are available for taxpayers. We'll cover what Taxpayer Advocate can do if you run into an issue. And then again, we'll have some time for questions. So the filing due date this year, April 15th. It usually is April 15th every year, but there's a special holiday in Washington, D.C., depending on what day of the week that falls. Sometimes the filing deadline can be later. I think last year it was on the 17th, but don't wait to the last minute. When you e-file a return, it gets submitted electronically. And if you wait to the last day, if it gets rejected because you didn't put in the correct social security number or some other issue, it might not be filed timely. So you want to make sure Don't wait till the last possible minute. Get that return filed well in advance of April 15th. Also, if you live in a federally declared disaster area, you may be allowed additional time. You can go on the IRS website for around the nation to find out if if your state is considered a federally declared disaster, and you would be entitled to an extension to file. So I want to talk about an important topic here, which is who do you trust to prepare your tax return? Who you trust to prepare your return is an incredibly important choice. All tax preparers are not equal. You want to look out for those who are going to promise larger than expected refunds or charge fees based on how much money they're going to get you, or promise you things that just sound too good to be true. One important point is that if you pay somebody to prepare your return, they have to have what's called a PTIN, which is a preparer tax identification number. It is required for any person who files a return for a fee. So that's one thing that you can look for when trying to find a reputable return preparer. It's also important to point out that just because you pay somebody to file your return, that doesn't mean you're off the hook. If you didn't put something on your return, or you overstated or understated, you can't just say, hey, I gave it to my return preparer. It's their fault. You are accountable for what's on the return or missing from the return, even if you pay somebody to prepare your return. That's why it's very important to choose someone that's reputable. You're going to verify their credentials. Don't sign blank forms. Those are all red flags. We see a lot of taxpayers get caught up in those situations where they're going to a preparer that's offering something that's too good to be true. So on the next slide, we'll talk about ghost preparers. And actually, on that point, that Susie, if you want to go back to that last slide, this is a screenshot of publication 5895. And so if you write that down again, publication 5895, 5895, this is a full page front and back English and Spanish flyer that has some QR codes and links for additional information on what you should specifically be looking for a return preparer. One of the things on that list, if you get to the next slide, is to avoid ghost preparers. What is a ghost preparer? That's somebody who prepares the return but doesn't sign their name to the return. And again, that's a huge red flag. We see a lot of times people will, when they have a ghost preparer, usually the preparer is doing things that are not appropriate. They're inflating credits to get you a larger refund, and they do that to justify a larger fee. So you want to make sure that when you get your return prepared, you want to look on the 1040, I believe on the second page, right beneath where your name would be, you would see the information for the return preparer. Even if you file electronically, there's going to be information on there about the person that prepared the return. And that's really important too, because tax issues don't always come up immediately. So if you filed today and there was an issue with that return, it may not be for 6 months or 12 months before you may get a letter or notice from the IRS. And you may want to contact that return preparer. Maybe you forgot who it was. You go to look back at the return, and then you're shocked to see that it's blank and it says it was self-prepared. And you know it wasn't self-prepared because you paid somebody to prepare the return, and now you can't find that person. So always a good best practice to make sure that whenever the return is submitted, that you get a copy, you review it, and you avoid using a ghost preparer. If you have access to the internet and you're somewhat computer savvy, you can use the IRS Free File. The IRS Free File program is a public-private partnership between the IRS and many tax preparation and tax software industry leaders who provide their brand name products at no cost. In order for it to be free, you have to access it through the IRS website. And if you need personal assistance filing your return, you also have some options. I work in the VITA program. So I work for IRS SPEC, which stands for Stakeholder Partnerships, Education, and Communication. It's a long name, but bottom line, we work on doing taxpayer education, and we help support the VITA TCE program, in other words, also known as free tax prep. These free tax prep sites operate all throughout the country. This year, I think we have almost 9,000 sites that are located all over the place. So odds are Wherever you're at, whether you're in this congressional district, or if you're living in Springfield or East St. Louis, or wherever you're at in the state, there's going to be a VITA site very close by. There's a VITA locator tool where you can put in your zip code and it will show you where the closest site is going to be. General eligibility for a VITA site is going to be based on your income and your scope of complexity, meaning VITA sites are doing very basic tax return preparation. I always laugh when I say basic, because even basic can sometimes be complicated. But generally speaking, it's going to be people who have things like wages, unemployment, 1099s from maybe retirement, pension. They may have a 1099 for maybe doing some work in the gig economy, like driving for Uber or DoorDash or something like that. Even though it does cover, basic returns, it is pretty expansive, but we're not doing overly complicated returns. We're not doing it for small businesses. We're not doing corporate returns. We're just kind of focusing on those basic returns. Most sites have an income cap at $64,000 per household, but sometimes it's more of a softer eligibility criteria. Sites do have discretion to go over that income limit, and that could be the case if the site was slow and they had room to serve you. But generally, we're trying to focus on doing returns for people who don't have the ability to pay for it themselves. We also operate and have oversight of the TCE program, which is tax counseling for the elderly, and that's done through our longstanding partnership with AARP. Those sites typically work with volunteers who are more experienced in doing returns that are have issues that are more common for seniors, so people who have pensions or annuities, and those sites are all located throughout the country as well. And the slides here have that information on where you can find that information, or you can go on irs.gov and you can type in free tax prep. Lots of resources out there. Before I turn it over to Susie, I'd say sometimes things do sound too good to be true, and this could be stealing the thunder of the scams, but do your research, go to the irs.gov, look for information there. We see a lot of times with social media, false information travels very quickly. And so don't fall for these scams. Susie, go ahead and take it away to our next segment.
Thanks, Andrew. So next, I just want to talk about some filing tips. When you get ready to file your tax return, you want to make sure that you file a complete and accurate tax return. And we do highly recommend that you file electronically to avoid any refund delays. Not only is electronic filing the safest and most accurate way to file a tax return, e-filed returns have fewer errors, which means fewer delays. And be sure to get your refund electronically by requesting direct deposit. Filing electronically and choosing direct deposit remains the fastest and the safest way to file an accurate income tax return and receive your refund. And I have to mention, make sure when you're entering your routing and account numbers for your bank account for your refund to be direct deposited to, don't just double check those numbers, triple check those numbers, because if those numbers aren't correct, then someone else could actually receive your refund. And to talk more about refunds, most refunds are actually issued in less than 21 days if you file electronically and request direct deposit. But sometimes tax returns can take a little bit longer to process, and that could be for many reasons, like there's errors on your return, or your return was incomplete, such as you didn't include all your income, or you didn't reconcile your premium tax credit from your health care through the marketplace. Sometimes it could be related to identity theft or fraud, or sometimes we pull tax returns just because they need just a general review. Now, the IRS will contact you by mail, not by phone, not by text, if additional information is needed to process your tax return. And the Where's My Refund tool on irs.gov remains the best source of information on the status of your refund. The tool is actually updated every day, and that usually happens overnight. Now, the following on the screen here, you can see a checklist that can help you avoid some errors. I already mentioned submitting it electronically. That e-file system does detect common errors and will reject your tax return, sending it back to you for correction if there's something that we noticed right off the top that's incorrect, Lots of times those rejects can be because you entered a name or a social security number wrong. This can help save you processing delays. Make sure that everything you put on your tax return is correct. Make sure your name and your spouse's name, if applicable, is correct. Make sure your dependents' names are correct. Make sure everyone's social security number is correct. Double check your address, including your zip code, making sure those are correct. Make sure you choose the correct filing status. Lots of folks think they're head of household, but if you're married, generally, if you live with your spouse, you should be filing married filing jointly or married filing separately. So make sure you're using that correct filing status. And only claim dependents you're eligible to claim. And then finally, accurately report all of your income, your expenses, and your deductions, and only claim credits that you qualified for. As stated, make sure your direct deposit information is correct. And then review your tax return before you sign it or submit it. Make sure, take a minute, look it over before you actually click that button to submit it. And then if you file in by paper, make sure that you sign your tax return. And then, of course, finally, make sure you keep a copy of not only your tax return, but all of your schedules that may be attached. You need those for your own records a lot of times. Okay, we've talked a lot about refunds, but we're getting towards the end of the filing season here. So oftentimes we run into the situation where people owe taxes. You should always file your tax return on time, even if you can't pay the full tax owed. So currently that's April 15th. So you should file by April 15th, even if you can't pay what you owe. Now, if you do need more time to file, you can submit a form 4868. Those can be done electronically through any tax software, or you can mail in a paper form 4868. Now, filing that form 4868 extension will give you until October 15th to file. However, that extension is an extension of time to file, not an extension of time to pay. You still have to pay everything due by April 15th, or penalty or interest will accrue. And this is unless you have an extended deadline because you're in a federally declared disaster area. And I know that in Illinois, the folks in Cook County do have a little bit of extra time to file. So as Andrew stated, go to Around the Nation on the IRS website to look up anything related to a federally declared disaster. We do allow more time for folks that are in that disaster area. Now, if you owe and you can't pay by the due date, it's not time to panic. You should still file your tax return, even if you're unable to pay in full. Pay as much as you can by the deadline in order to minimize the amount of penalties and interest that will accrue. And then we have options. We have several payment options. You can ask for a short-term extension to pay. That's up to 180 days. We can just postpone your balance due for 180 days. You can get an extended payment plan for a longer period of time. Or if you just don't think you're going to be able to pay anything at all, you may qualify for an offer in compromise, or that the IRS temporarily delay the collection process until your financial situation improves. You can find more information about all of your payment options on the IRS website by going to irs.gov/payments. Now I want to talk a little bit about language options. Not everybody in the United States speaks English. And on our website, we provide helpful information for taxpayers. And it's a great place to start with tax questions. And many of our products and services are offered in several foreign languages. Now, for access to information in any of the 7 languages that the IRS currently translate information, you can click on the IRS website, and where it says English at the top, there's a drop-down bar. There's a drop-down bar where you can change it to several other languages. Well, most information is available in English and Spanish. We do have help also available in Chinese Traditional and Chinese Simplified, Korean, Russian, Vietnamese, and Haitian Creole. You can also attach a Schedule LEP to your tax return to let us know your language preference, and then the IRS will send written communications when necessary to you in the language of your choice. Now it's important to talk about scams and phishing. Thousands of people have lost millions of dollars and their personal information to tax scammers, and these scammers are out there perpetrating fraud. Now, sometimes they use the regular mail, but most of the time when you get a scam, it's either by telephone, and that could be a phone call or a text, or by email. And they are trying to trick individuals, businesses, payroll providers, and tax professionals every single day. It's important to note that the IRS does not initiate contact with taxpayers by email, text messages, and definitely not on social media channels to request your personal or your financial information. There's a few telltale signs that any contact with you could be a scam. Lots of times these scammers will call, email, or text and demand that you immediately pay them using a specific payment method, such as a prepaid debit card, gift card, or a wire transfer. It's important to note the IRS will mail you a letter through the U.S. Postal Service to any taxpayer who owes taxes. Oftentimes, these scammers may threaten immediately to bring in local police or other law enforcement groups to have you arrested for not paying. Sometimes they demand that the taxes be paid without giving you the opportunity to question or appeal the amount they say you owe. And sometimes they may even call you unexpectedly to tell you that you're due a tax refund. Here's a few simple suggestions that can help protect you from these potential dangers and the dangers to your personal information, such as never overshare. This means never give out your personal information over the phone or to someone that you didn't call. Be cautious when you're using public Wi-Fi. This is not the time to check your bank balance or access any of your accounts that require a login or a password. And very importantly, don't click on links. Don't click on links in texts or emails. If your bank emails you or the IRS emails you and asks you to log into your account using a link, don't click that link. You know how to get to your bank's website. You know how to get to the IRS website. Go there and access your account, not through a link sent to you in a text or an email. And finally, don't click on any attachments to emails unless you are positive that it came from someone you know. And even then, call that person first and verify that they have emailed you something before you open an attachment. Clicking on a link or opening an attachment can be a way for a scammer to access your personal information. And then finally, make sure if you're online, you're using some kind of security software and antivirus protection. Those tools do go a long way to keep people from getting into your computer systems. Now, the IRS has recently warned taxpayers to be on the lookout for a new scam that's coming through the paper mail, and it tries to mislead you into thinking you're owed a refund. It actually comes in a cardboard envelope that kind of looks like an envelope that a refund check would come in, and it says it's from a private delivery service. And then the letter inside includes IRS letterhead with contact information and a phone number that do not belong to the IRS. And in that wording, the notice says, in relation to your unclaimed refund. Just know that you can always call the IRS at 1-800-TAX-1040 to verify whether or not we are trying to get in touch with you. And there's a page on the IRS website, Tax Scams and Consumer Alerts, that keeps you up to date on the newest scams. And finally, there's help available on the IRS website for many things. You can go online to view your tax account. Any tax law question you have, you can use our interactive tax law assister. Our Let Us Help You page gives you all kinds of options on how to get help, including what phone numbers to call for specific types of telephone service. And then our IRS Services Guide, the publication 5136, goes into all kinds of services that the IRS can offer you. And finally, the one that's most popular on our website, Where's My Refund? Now I want to turn it over to BC to talk about the Taxpayer Advocate Service. BC?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, I'm sorry. Am I next,
Yes,
Susie?
yes, you're up.
Okay, I'm up next. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to be talking about the Taxpayer Advocate Service. Taxpayer Advocate Service is an organization, it's part of IRS, but it is an independent organization within IRS. We help taxpayers resolve tax issues that taxpayers have not been able to resolve with IRS. We have offices all over United States. We have 2 offices in Illinois, 1 in Chicago, 1 in Springfield. We help all types of taxpayers, including individuals, businesses, nonprofits, anyone that have issues with IRS. We are ready to help them. Our services are free. We do not charge any fees for our services. So if you have any issues with IRS and you've not been able to resolve them through normal channel, then you come to Taxpayer Advocate Service. Always try to resolve your problem with the IRS first. But if you can't, then you can come to the Taxpayer Advocate Service. You may be eligible for a service if your IRS problem is causing you financial difficulty or significant cost. If you qualify for our help, our case advocate will be with you throughout the step of the advocacy process. You have 2 options of receiving services from us. You can either contact us directly, or you can go through your congressional office. And your congressional office will be the liaison between us and you. Now, we try to advocate for taxpayers by providing referral to IRS. We don't do the actual resolution from our end. We act as liaison between the IRS and the taxpayers. And then we provide instruction to IRS to get your issues resolved. I'll give a few examples of where we can help you. Let's say you have completed your tax return, you've waited for several weeks or months, and you've not received your refund. Then you need to either reach out to Taxpayer Advocate Service, or you reach out to your congressional office and the congressional aide can help you. We have a new online tool that can help you determine if it is time to call us or if you need to reach out for help. You can visit www.taxpayeradvocate.irs.gov. Can tax help me with my tax issues? To access the tax qualifier tool. The tool will ask you several questions about your issue, and then based on your response to the questions, you will determine if we will be able to help you. Okay. Let's talk about how we can help you help yourself. So it's not only Taxpayer Advocate Service helping you. We have a variety of tools on our website where you can seek assistance directly from there. Our website has self-help information on many tax-related topics with step-by-step instructions on how to work the problem through with the IRS. Tax website is designed to help taxpayers and tax professionals if they have any issues, and you can view the website on your mobile device as well. The website screenshots on the slide show the main Get Help page. If you select View All Help, you'll be presented with a search box where you can search for a specific topic or an IRS notice number. A couple of examples of where you can get help. Once you choose the topic closest to the issue you may have, you will see information laid out in certain formats, such as, what do I need to know? And that would display description and explanation of the issue. What should I do? Then there'll come up a section explaining the steps you can take to resolve the issue. How will this affect me? On and on. Wait, I still need help. And then there are resources and guidance section that will give you a listing of all the resources available that relate to the issue you are seeking. A taxpayer's rights section describes your rights as a taxpayer, specifically related to the issue that you are seeking. And lastly, there's a related content section that provides additional information on the topic in related articles. And there's also a link to the taxpayer roadmap to find out where you are in the tax process. The taxpayer roadmap provides a visual display of where your tax services are within the IRS. Maybe it's a collection, exam, or processing, or wherever they are. So that will lead you through to see which area of the IRS is handling your issue. Our site also has information on free or low-cost services for low-income and elderly taxpayers, should you need it. So if you have a federal tax-related problem, start there on our website. You can go here, even if you simply wish to learn more about a certain topic before filing a tax return. Next slide. Again, we urge you to check out TAS's website or sign up to follow us on social media for information about tax help and the latest tax-related news. We also want you to know that as part of tax outreach and education activities, we hold problem-solving day events. Locally, in Chicago, we do have problem-solving days every quarter. If you would like to attend, reach out to your congressional office. We hope this information is very helpful. Thank you for joining us. We are here to serve you at the Taxpayer Advocate Service. Over to you. Now we have time for questions. Over to you, Catherine.
Yeah, so we have a few questions that were submitted previously via email that we have here. If we don't get to your question and you submitted a question via email, we're going to reach out to you directly with the answer from the IRS. So be on the lookout for an email. And if you have any other questions or need assistance regarding your return, please utilize the link that was shared in the chat for our Privacy Act release form, and you can provide us all the information, and a constituent advocate in our office will be in touch. So our first question is, can tax returns from past years be filed electronically, or do they need to be done via paper?
I'll take that one, Catherine. So generally you can file your current year and the 2 prior years electronically. However, that has to be done to do prior year tax returns. You can't use the do-it-yourself tax software and file electronically. You have to use like a tax professional, and some of our VITA sites and maybe even some of our low-income taxpayer clinics can do prior year tax returns for you. But generally, yes, they can be filed electronically, but generally you have to go through a third party to file the prior year returns electronically.
Okay, great. That actually covers our next question about if someone can receive help. So they can go to VITA if they have previous tax years within that 2-year period.
I'll let Andrew cover that one.
Most sites should be able to prepare prior year returns. However, some sites will prioritize doing current year returns, especially early in the filing season. So if you do need to have a couple years of returns prepared, you may want to reach out to the site and see what their procedures are. I will tell you that the sites typically tend to be the busiest in the first couple weeks of the season, which is usually, first couple weeks in February. And then right about now, we're going to start to see it pick up again early on in the season. People who typically get refunds, they kind of know that they're getting refunds, so they go out very early. The people that have more complicated or balance dues, they tend to wait, putting it off kind of. And so they wait to the very end. And so sometimes in March, that's a good time to get to these sites because they're not as busy, not as congested. A lot of the VITA sites do different types of formats. Some of them do drop off where you show up, give them your paperwork, come back. Some of them do more of a traditional method where you kind of sit there, go through it from start to finish, all in once, all at once. And it sometimes might take a little bit longer, but you kind of have the convenience of just, once you show up and leave, you're kind of done with it.
Okay, and just to reiterate, because VITA offers such an important service to our constituents, that is the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program. For those who qualify, they can receive assistance for free and can help them file their return. So our next question is something we've gotten a few times in our office, and there might not be a specific answer, but I just want to make sure we touch on it, which is solar panels. So the constituent asked, is the cost of solar panels on a residential roof tax deductible?
I'm going to take that one now. Everything in the IRS is generally and usually, so there's not actually a tax deduction for a solar panel on your roof, but there is a tax credit that may be available to put solar panels on your roof. And that can be up to, I believe, 30% of the cost. But to make sure that you qualify and that 30% is correct, I highly suggest you look at our Form 5695 and instructions, which is for the residential energy credit, and go through all the steps to make sure you do qualify for that tax credit.
Perfect, thank you. So we're just gonna cover two more questions really quickly. This constituent asked, can Social Security is their main source of income other than a return from an IRA account? They're both over 65, do they need to file taxes?
I'll take that one too. So it depends. If your only income is Social Security, then you generally are not required to file. However, you're talking about an IRA distribution or a retirement distribution as well. So it depends on the dollar amount of that distribution and whether or not that dollar amount causes any of your Social Security to be taxable. So it would be good to just go through and do the worksheet. The IRS has a publication 501 that goes into your filing requirements and whether or not you're required to file a tax return. So I would recommend you just run through the worksheet in publication 501 to make sure.
Okay, and then next one is, do children under 24 have to file their own taxes if they do part-time summer work, or should they file as a dependent with their parents?
I'll take that one too. Okay, sorry, I answer tax law questions all day long. So the child may be required to file a tax return. Again, it depends on the source of that income. If it's just a side job from an employer that took out taxes, they may not be required to file, but they may want to file in order to get back any federal income tax withheld from their paychecks. In addition, as long as their parents are eligible to, their parents could still claim them as a dependent on their tax return, but the child would need to make sure that when the child files the tax return, that they check the box that their parent or someone else can claim them as a dependent.
Okay, and so we did get a question through the chat. So really quickly, this constituent has not yet filed 21 or 22 tax years yet. They're over 75, only income is Social Security and an interest on a savings totaling under $25,000. Are they likely to have a penalty for late filing?
So their total income, including their Social Security, is $23,000. As long as they're single, I really want to say they're not required to file, because if their Social Security plus their other income is less than their standard deduction amount, because the Social Security would likely not be taxable, then there would be no filing requirement. And if they're not required to file, then there's no penalties, of course, for not filing a tax return if you're not required to file. But again, I'm going to refer you to publication 501 just to double check that filing requirement and make sure that you're underneath the threshold. Just depends on how much of that is Social Security.
Okay, so as I stated before our Q&A, if you submitted a question when you registered, we are going to reach out to each of those constituents with a response to their questions. Some of them were a little bit more specific, so we just want to make sure you get the answer. So we'll be following up with each of you with those answers. A recording of this briefing is also going to be available, and we can share that for participants that weren't able to make it. And to wrap up, we're going to throw it back to Congresswoman Schakowsky.
Thank you so much, all of you, for the great information that you have. I hope that it has been helpful to you. I know that some people who pre-registered, about 100 people, did get questions answered, and you heard some of them answered today. But if they have not been, if you have a question about your tax returns, that's the question. I want to invite you to call our office, and we will continue to work with you to make sure that you feel comfortable, that you know what you're doing, and that you are able to file your taxes in a safe way. So thank you. Thanks all of you for participating. Thank you, Catherine, from my staff, and everyone else. Great work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.